Hey everybody, it's great to see you. Welcome again to another great cooking episode. I have a great recipe to share with you. Now, it's still morning here, but by the time I probably edit this and post this and whatever, it's going to be afternoon, but that's okay. This morning, I am making some great low-carb, sugar-free pancakes. So this is such a great recipe for those of you who are watching your carb intake or watching your sugar intake. It's kind of a step away from the normal pancake, but they are so delicious that you definitely want to give this a try. So go ahead, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So the first thing that I did in my bowl, we're going to be making this as well in the blender. The same thing that we did with the brownies, the black bean brownies. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video, hop on over to that one. That one's a great recipe. It's one of my favorite desserts, and there's no flour in it. It's just lovely. I love it. It's with black beans, and you would have never guessed that there were black beans and dates and all this yummy ingredients in it. So don't forget to check that one out. So in this bowl here, I've already combined some almond flour and some coconut flour. Now, if you want to omit the coconut flour, you can, but I think it just adds a wonderful, wonderful taste and good consistency as well. So in this bowl, I have 2/3 cup of almond flour, and then I have 3 rounded tablespoons of the coconut flour. Okay, so 2/3 cup of almond flour and 3 tablespoons of the coconut flour. Okay, so I'm just gonna set this to the side. I'm gonna add a few more dry ingredients to it. Now to this, I'm going to add, I have a little bit of sweetener in here, the artificial sweetener, and I've gone ahead and I've added 1 teaspoon of that, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, okay? Baking powder and the sweetener, and then just a pinch of salt. So that's gonna go in there, and then that's gonna sit right there. Now, I've got some other ingredients that I need to add. Now, there's 2 eggs, 2 large eggs, okay? And you wanna go ahead and crack those in a separate bowl, just so that you can fish out any of the shells, just in case. I'm famous for that. Now, these are warmed up. These are room temperature eggs. And like I've said before, if you don't have room temperature eggs out, if you go to make this and you go, oh, I didn't take out the eggs ahead of time, that's completely fine. You just put them into a bowl with some warm water, drop the eggs in there, shells and all, you know, just set them in there, let them soak for about 5 minutes, okay? And then you bring them out, and those eggs are right up to room temperature, and you don't have to worry about having them set out on your counter because you forgot or you're in a hurry, okay? So we've got 2 eggs, and to that, I'm gonna get my tap water running here. I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of just regular tap water, okay? I'm gonna add that to my eggs. And then I'm gonna give them a little bit of a whisk. So yummy. And then I have 2 ounces of cubed cream cheese. Okay, so that's 1/4 of a regular package. Okay, so 2 ounces, you just, you know, I just eyeballed it, half and then half again. And then you just cube it up, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add the wet ingredients first to our mixer. So we have the eggs and a little bit of water, okay? Tablespoon is all you need, all right? And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add our chunks of cream cheese. Now, if the cream cheese isn't completely room temperature, it's okay. After you cube it up and you handle it a little bit, it becomes room temperature pretty darn quick. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put our cover on the blender, and we're just gonna blend this just for 1 cycle, okay? Now I've got this on my little shake mixture, so it pulses and then it comes down and then it goes back up and then it comes down. So we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna let that go through 1 full cycle. If you don't, then just put it on low for about 30 seconds. Okay, that just finished through its first cycle. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of vanilla to this. Now I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of vanilla to the mix, and that is just gonna go right into the top. Now you can do this beforehand if you want, but I add it just before I add the dry ingredients because there's really no need to beat that all down in as well. But you can go ahead and do that if you want to, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 1 more ingredient to our dry ingredients, and I'm gonna mix this together before I put it into the blender, and that is cinnamon. So cinnamon is so wonderful in this recipe. You definitely wanna give it a try. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. That wasn't quite one. A little bit extra for good measure, right? You can never have enough cinnamon. I love cinnamon. Okay, now I'm just gonna take my whisk and I'm just gonna combine these ingredients together. Just so they have it has a nice, even consistency throughout before I add it to the blender. Like I said, you can make these for the kids and they won't even know that they're good for them. All right, you can avoid all that sugar, added sugar and all that flour. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add this to our blender. And the good thing is you're just gonna do it all right in the blender. Now you can do it in the food processor too if you want to. I'm making a mess here this morning. It doesn't wanna go all into the blender. There we go. I think I got most everything in there. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this on low and then we're gonna slowly speed it up. And it's just gonna sit there and it's gonna mix. Now you're gonna wanna mix this for a good 30 seconds to a minute. I do a minute, okay? So this is on 1, and I'm just gonna let that incorporate. I'm gonna keep it nice and slow, and we're just gonna keep it all going, okay? So we'll be back in just 1 minute. All right, it has been just about a minute, maybe a hair less. All right, and that has, wow, that looks wonderful, you guys. All right, so this is gonna have a thick consistency to it, but that's what we want because it doesn't have all that flour and gluten and everything else that's in it. Now I'm gonna go ahead, I just take a regular spatula and I'm gonna scrape this out and into my bowl. Now I'm gonna let this rest for about 2 minutes, okay, or thereabouts, just a couple of minutes while it rests. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get my griddle ready. And I'm gonna spray it and get the heat up nice and high, and then we'll be ready to make them. So we're gonna go right over to the stove after this sits for just a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna fry them up, and they're gonna be delicious. All right, everybody, I've made a couple ahead of time just so that you can kind of see. I've got my grill nice and hot, and then I turned it back down to medium heat just to keep that heat within this little griddle that I have here. Now I just go ahead, I spray it with a non-stick cooking spray, and then I take a scoop, like this is like a medium ice cream scoop, and I am just going to, well, this one's a little sticky because I've done it like a couple of times, but you just take the back end of your scoop and just kind of push down a little bit. You'll be able to push down a little bit more once you flip these, but you're gonna just let this set just for a minute. It's not gonna take too long. You're gonna see little bubbles around the edges of it. That's when you know you wanna flip them. All right, so again, my heat is on medium now. This is pretty hot, so it's not gonna take any time for these to flip right over. You just wait, you're gonna be able to gauge it based on your own griddle, okay, and what temperature that you have it on. But what I do is I just let it set till I can just see little bubbles form around the edges, and I kind of take my spatula and just kind of guess on it and then flip it over. See, that one wasn't quite done. But then you can just kind of pat it down with your spatula and you can make it a little bit flatter just so that they're not super thick and gooey in the middle. That's what you want. All right, so this is gonna get flipped over, and then you just watch them. Just watch them till they're nice and golden brown. And this makes, it depends on how big you want your pancakes, but you can double or triple this batch. And if you wanted to substitute the water and add a little bit of almond milk, you might need a little bit more liquid, like say 2 tablespoons instead of the water, okay? So if you're looking to add a little more richness to it with the almond milk, you could definitely do that. And like I said, you can omit the coconut flour if you wanted to and just use all almond flour instead of the coconut flour if you didn't have it, okay? I've never done this with just coconut flour, so I'd be anxious to see if any of you have coconut flour and want to do the whole thing with coconut flour. Would it work? I don't know. I've never tested it. I've only tested it with the majority of the almond flour. All right, so these are cooking up great. See how nice and golden brown they're getting? And they're just so delicious. Now these are little because I'm only gonna have a couple for breakfast this morning, okay? But I just store these after I cook them. I store them in like a Ziploc bag in the refrigerator, and then when I want them the next morning or in a couple of days, they'll keep for a good 3 to 4 days in the refrigerator, maybe even longer, but I've never tested that because they never last that long for me. But I just put them in a Ziploc bag, keep them in the refrigerator, and then I take them out and nuke them for like 30 seconds. put a little butter on them, a little of all natural maple syrup. I'm lucky enough to have quite a few friends that do syrup in the winter or early springtime, and they tap the trees, and then we always get some of theirs. So I'm able to hone in on that pure goodness of the maple syrup. So these are almost done. I just want you to see that I've got a couple of finished ones over here, but I want you to see when these come out how delicious they look. Now they're gonna firm up on the edges, and you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel it cook right through. This one here is perfect. I want you to see this. Don't they look great? They're so good. And they're good for you. No flour, no sugar. All right? Those people that are on the keto diet or watching their carb intakes, this is a great source for you to make in the morning. You get your pancakes, everybody. You don't have to worry about it. So I hope you like this recipe. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to that YouTube channel, that little red button right down there. Go ahead and click subscribe, and you can be clued in on all the great videos that I have. Hop on over to dspantrycooking.com. That's with an N. All right, dspantrycooking.com. You can see all my products. You can get the cookbook, whatever you want. We'd love to share it with as many family and friends as we have out there. So don't forget, whatever you do, you make it with love. We'll see you next time.